Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro, friends. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Elixir Specialty Coffee. Looks like whiskey, feels like tea, made from coffee, and unlike anything you've tasted before. Head to elixirspecialtycoffee.com and use the code MAPITFORWARD to get 10% off your first purchase today. While you're there, check out the Coffee for the Frontline initiative that Elixir is the launch partner for, and track that, how it's going on social media. See if you want to get involved as well with your business in a partnership for Coffee for the Frontline, which is a Map It Forward initiative. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, we're talking about the new cafe model. What do we mean by the new cafe model? Why is it even a thing? Is it real? Well, yes, it is real. And I want to talk about why that's something that we should all be considering right now. The cafe model, as we saw it before, was dependent on a couple of things that are no longer allowed to happen for the foreseeable future. And what we mean by that is, previously, we were all trying to get the numbers up for the number of people who would patron our businesses. So the more people that came to your cafe, the more likely you are to make a profit. The more people that came to your cafe, the more likely you are to be able to increase the even greater number of people that would come to your cafe. Now, we're in a pandemic. Being in a pandemic means that we have one of two solutions to get out of this pandemic. Either we come up with a vaccine or we get herd immunity. Now, herd immunity means that enough of us we have protection from carrying the virus and expressing the virus, that we're slowing down passing on the virus because it needs new hosts to reinfect. When we have herd immunity, it slows down the transmission of the virus. Having the vaccine means that we can get vaccinated and we no longer are debilitated by the disease that's caused by the virus, which is COVID-19. The time it's going to take for us to come up with a vaccine, best case scenario from what we've seen in the past, has been 4 years. And that was the mumps vaccine. So that's the quickest vaccine in history that we've ever been able to come up with. Now, we know that the scientific community is coming together better than they've ever come together before to work on this vaccine. But remember that even if they're able to come up with a vaccine in 18 months, like some of them are assuming, the SARS-1 vaccine that they've been working on it since 2011. That's SARS-1. This is SARS-2. So sure, they're going to be able to hopefully take some of the work that they've been doing on the SARS-1 vaccine and implement it with SARS-2, but we have no guarantees that that's going to work. Coronaviruses in particular are especially difficult to come up with vaccines for because of the nature of the kind of virus that they are. There is no vaccine for any function of a coronavirus or any of the viruses that are in the coronavirus family. It's never been done, which adds an added complexity to coming up with a vaccine. So let's say they're able to meet the previously set standard of how quickly they can come up with a vaccine. That's 4 years. Let's go off that assumption. And let's say they're able to come up with a vaccine that quickly, which I'm not sure they'll be able to. They then have to produce that vaccine for almost 7 billion people. So if they have to manufacture and administer that vaccine for that many people, the majority of the laboratories that are working on coming up with the vaccine don't have the capacity to manufacture that many vaccines. So we then have a whole other waiting period to get the first rollout of the vaccine. And the other thing that they're not talking to us about openly is the vaccine may only be viable for a certain amount of time before you have to take a booster shot of the vaccine, which they then have to produce another 8 million versions of. Add the complexity to that the vaccine that they're working on today is based on the version of the coronavirus that they are working on today. It may mutate by the time that they have the next vaccine, and then they have to come up with another vaccine. So as you can see, this is all very complex. And the reason I wanted to bring all of that up is to help you see that it is important for you to accept the new normal of our industry, because the cafe can no longer be, for the foreseeable future, and the foreseeable future being about 4 years, the cafe environment has changed for at a minimum of 4 years. And we have to adapt to a new cafe model. Now, if you listened to our recent episode with Gina DeBritta, Gina opened up an espresso bar towards the end of April, just a few days ago. And she opened up an espresso bar, and her philosophy behind that is, I have to look at a new model, and that model has to take into account social distancing. And so Gina is completely automating the whole cafe so that she can minimize and protect any staff that have to be in there. So rather than having to have 3 baristas or 4 baristas in one cafe at a time, she can minimize that to have 1 or 2 baristas in there at any one time. Automation and less staff are the way of the future with regards to cafes, so that you're going to have to run a food program in countries like Australia and in European countries, in other parts of the world where food and coffee work well together. That's not so much something that happens here in the US. They haven't quite figured the model out here, but it's going to be one of those situations where one person in the kitchen, one person front of house, maybe 2 people front of house, and having a flow that minimizes the contact that barista has with preparing the coffee to create more safety and more calm in your customer, and then minimizing the contact that the customer has to have with the equipment and with the people in the cafe. This is going to be the thing that's the new focus with the way that the cafe model is going to have to be constructed. If you have a cafe, if you work in a cafe and you're trying to figure out how to get back to business, the curbside pickup is going to be a reality for the short to medium term future. But people are going to want, as we come into summer here, people are going to want to find ways to not have to be standing out in the heat. And it's going to get hot soon. It's going to get really hot soon. We're going to have to fix those problems. Similarly, in Australia, where it's about to get cold and wet soon, curbside pickup is not going to be something that's going to work well. And they're going to undergo a whole other level of problem as people decide not to go out for their coffee. That takes me to the next idea of what the cafe model is going to be. The cafe model may be a virtual model from now on, moving forward, whereby the barista is brewing virtually with people at home and training them how to be a home barista. And the cafe becomes a place where they simply pick up supplies for brewing at home, and they are taught how to do that so that the barista becomes somebody who is a trainer for the consumer rather than a trainer for other baristas. That's something to consider. And how do you monopolize on those opportunities as a cafe owner moving forward? How do you monopolize on those opportunities as a coffee professional moving forward? The cafe model has changed. Knowing what your role is in determining what that's going to be into the future is going to be incredibly important. In the previous episode, we talked about looking for the opportunities because they're everywhere. This is one of them. How are you going to solve the problems that people have moving forward in the new cafe model? I hope that's been helpful. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends.